much activity all across the board. People complaining they lost because this, that, and the other thing, and maybe people are just realizing and they're going to have to accept the fact that the media has been so skewed in trying to make people believe that everybody accepts what's going on. Like, people are just not stupid. They're tired of it. And ultimately, the truth always ends up coming out. But that doesn't mean that the groups that are controlled by the black hand that controls everything, the hand of wickedness and evil, it's not just going to go away.
We will take down the Ring of Fire. We will support our friends in Israel, but he's going to need help to do that.
The biggest mistake I made was I picked some great people, but you don't think about that. I picked some people that I shouldn't have picked. I picked a few people that I shouldn't have picked.
In February 2017, the landscape changed dramatically. President Trump had been elected. He appointed two wolves in MAGA hats, Mike Pompeo, a Kansas congressman and former arms industry executive, as CIA director.
One of the things that I want to talk to you about is the JFK files.
I opened them up partially. I was met from good people. Good people. People that were well-meaning. Mike Pompeo was one of them. He's a good person.
And I got a phone call from Mike Pompeo's lawyer. Mike Pompeo was the Secretary of State, but before then, he was the director of the CIA. His lawyer called me and said, you should know that anyone who tells you the contents of classified documents has committed a crime. He's threatening me. So Mike Pompeo is the one who pressed Trump to keep those documents secret. And so it's like, what's crazy to me is not just that Pompeo did that. I think Pompeo is a really sinister person and a criminal. I think that because the facts suggest that. He was caught.
This leak, which actually WikiLeaks began publishing in early months of 2017, exposed the CIA's most sensitive hacking tools. And it was considered at the time the largest data loss in CIA history. And Mike Pompeo, who had just come in as the new CIA director, was enraged by this.
WikiLeaks walks like a hostile intelligence service and talks like a hostile intelligence service. It has encouraged its followers to find jobs at the CIA in order to obtain intelligence. It's time to call out WikiLeaks for what it really is: a non-state hostile intelligence service, often abetted by state actors like Russia.
And that opened the door for the CIA to plan all sorts of operations, including the abduction of Julian Assange, and there was talk even of a possible assassination.
My wife and my infant son were also targeted. A CIA asset was permanently assigned to track my wife, and instructions were given to obtain DNA from my 6-month-old son's nappy.
That's who Mike Pompeo is. But he somehow intimidated Trump into not releasing this. Well, okay, that's all bad, right? I think it's criminal behavior. What's crazy is how Mike Pompeo is treated. He's treated as like a Republican poobah in good standing. He fully expects to become the Secretary of Defense in a Trump administration, which is like completely insane. Why would you take a criminal and give him nuclear weapons?
Now, President Trump's going to secure our southern border. We will bring peace back to the world. We will take down the Ring of Fire. We will support our friends in Israel, but he's going to need help to do that.
He said, we're going to take down the Ring of Fire. That means Iran. That means he's promising war with Iran. And we're going to support Israel, which is meaning that to support Israel's war with Iran. So even in this closing statement, he is saying we're going to bring more war. And you may not notice that if you don't listen closely, but that's what Trump is getting if he hires a Mike Pompeo.
Overall, in my lifetime, ever since I've been watching things, the Fed goes on, printing money goes on, the debt goes on, our empire grows, the warmongering continues, the deep state is very powerful, and they influence both sides, no matter who wins.
What's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
As a matter of fact, I think he's on his way, to becoming Secretary of State or
Defense. Yeah. Nikki Haley's out there. Tom Cotton is out there. Lindsey Graham, little Marco Rubio's out there. He was introducing, I think, Trump down in Florida. And these are all bad guys.
More and more people are thinking maybe we shouldn't be complacent. And in a way, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Don't get too complacent.
During the George Floyd riots, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey abandoned the city's 3rd precinct, surrendering it to rioters who then set fire to it.
The mayor defends abandoning the 3rd precinct.
If we were to continue to attempt to hold the 3rd precinct, very likely there would have been hand-to-hand combat, likely serious injury, and maybe death.
After the George Floyd riots, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey was in the spotlight to defund the police.
Majority of Minneapolis's city council is pledging to defund or dismantle the police department following the death of George Floyd. However, the city's mayor, Jacob Frey, opposes that. Protesters chanted, "Go home, Jacob," over the weekend after he said he does not support dismantling the department. When you campaigned on reform, that's part of how you got elected. You have reformed the body cam policy. You have banned warrior training, but we still have the George Floyd incident. Is reform enough?
I don't want to comment on precisely what the council meant by disbanding or ending the police force. I think there's varying opinions. But what I'm saying is, look, I'm not for abolishing, but deep structural reform, absolutely, we have to make it happen.
To reform the police, they decided to replace SWAT teams with social workers. Governor Tim Walz gave it his stamp of approval while admitting they don't have the staff to do it.
This idea of violence interveners and problem solvers or social workers pairing with police to respond to some mental health calls, many of those are domestic situations that escalate very quickly and turn violent. How realistic is it to have a social worker respond with a police officer in real time? I'm just curious, would it almost require a separate force of social workers and violence interveners to respond to these calls, and how would that work in practice?
Well, here's what I would tell you is when it comes to social workers, I've been talking about this forever. I think we talk about Minnesota, and I oftentimes point the rosy picture of where we rank on certain things. You've heard me say this as a teacher, we rank last on school counselors and social workers. So one of the things is of trying to find those people, trying to have them out there and trying to have them integrated into real life.
Last week, on Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024, Davis Maturi was doing yard work outside his South Minneapolis home when his neighbor shot him.
Surveillance video obtained by NBC Minneapolis affiliate KARE 11 shows the moment Maturi fell to the ground.
His neighbor, John Sawchak, was then charged with second-degree attempted murder, first-degree assault, and stalking and harassment because Maturi has been reporting him to the police for over a year.
According to court documents, Maturi had called police on Sawchak 19 times in the last year, alleging his neighbor had threatened to kill him and his wife, brandished a knife at them, and hurled racial slurs.
Maturi was told by a female police commander that her officers were frightened of Sawchak, and she didn't want to put them at risk. After shooting his neighbor, Sawchak was not arrested. They sent social workers and psychologists to try and de-escalate the situation. And after days of this, Frey and O'Hara had a press conference to complain about the public's outrage.
To that victim, I say I am sorry that this happened to you. But it could not be anything further from the truth to say that we did nothing or that we just simply don't care. That's not true. Everything that we do is impacted by the reality that the police department is much smaller today than what it was prior to 2020, and we are dealing with a much higher call load. We cannot, as a community, on one hand say, hey, we want cops to use less force. We want less SWAT teams. We want more de-escalation. And then when we actually do that, say, how come the cops didn't use the SWAT team right away? We have been there 24/7 the last few days. We have been using our behavioral threat assessment team. We have used a psychiatrist. We have spoken to this individual's family. We have made dozens of attempts to contact this person. But again, to say that we simply don't care or we did nothing is simply not true.
This feels a whole lot more like politics than it does like somebody that's trying to find a solution. We're about trying to find a solution right now. Again, less politics, that kind of thing is gross.
Hours after this press conference, Sawchak was finally arrested and taken into custody.
If you're saying you're scared, what does that do to me, you know?